Thank you, and first of all, also my compliments to Simeon Somokos for putting together the forum this year, which is our real institution, I think, in the think tank life of Greece. First of all, let me say that I don't have these qualities of an oracle that the preceding speaker had, so I admit that I've been very wrong on many things in the last 2, 3, even 10 years, and yet I would answer your question, Alexis, is there a future for Europe and the euro, with a clear yes, but it will be qualified, and I will get to this in a moment. First of all, I think after Brexit and Trump, there is something like a new dimension in the discussion on the European Union going through the continent. So I also note with interest that the interest in the UK in European affairs, if I follow the domestic debate in the UK, has never been as intense as it has been now. But we note that there is, for the first time since many months, a rise in the approval rate again in favor of the EU. And I am also confident that in the coming elections, we will have results that will create the necessary space for the EU to put its house into order. But in order for the EU to have this future, on which I'm optimistic, I would like to make, first of all, a couple of points that are of a more general nature. I think Mr. Papademos has already mentioned many things on which I could fully subscribe, and also I think my government could subscribe to a very large extent. But I would like to make some more general observations on what is below the texture of the operational policies, and that there I think there are 4 issues that I see. The first issue that I see is that we have to, on a psychological level, rethink our relationship between the member states and the European Union. I had the doubtful privilege to work 8 years or 15 years in European affairs and 8 years in Brussels. And I've been to a couple of European councils, and there's a very interesting phenomenon, and maybe Mr. Wieser will confirm this, that after each of these European councils you have these press conferences, and you have 28 prime ministers or chancellors who declare complete victory, saying that they have achieved everything. Now, this is a very funny phenomenon, and you wonder whether it is possibly true, but I would like to remind you that Javier Solana, in a recent op-ed for Project Syndicate, had actually turned the famous Trump sentence, America first, into European Union first, but what he meant was not the kind of Trumpish version of European Union first, but he had said that our national governments should start thinking more in their European identity and from the perspective of their responsibility for the European project, and not only from the perspective of the national gains that they can make in each negotiations. Because I think, and I'm sure that there will be some people here who will contradict me, but I mean the basic equation that the European Union was built upon still holds, and that is that all member states cede sovereignty, but they get back, of course, a plus in security, a plus in prosperity, and a plus in margin to shape global affairs that they would have if they were only Germany or the Netherlands or Belgium and so on. Second point that I would like to say that is crucial, I think, for Europe to come to grips with is our relationship towards peace and security. Now, I belong to a generation where we have already been more or less born into the European Union. It was a given. We didn't think much about peace, although the generation of our parents was very much marked by the emotional experience of the World War. And I think for the generation of our children, it's even of my children, it's even more evident that when I talked to them some 10 years ago about the advantage of preventing wars and creating a stable, secure environment, I mean, they said yes, but it didn't mean much to them. However, we have seen with Yugoslavia, and we have seen certainly with what's happening in Ukraine, and we've seen with the war in the Middle East, we've seen with the migration challenge, we've seen with terrorism, that suddenly security has become a top issue again. And if you go through the polls of what European citizens consider important, in many countries, this is now on the top of the agenda. So I think that we have to put security at the very top of our agenda in many countries, maybe not so much in Greece, because you have a difficult neighbor, but I mean, if you are living in a Baltic state, things might look different. And if you are living in a capital which has been struck by terrorist attacks like Paris or Madrid or London or Berlin now, you might also understand that people have real concerns because terrorism has been coming closer to them. The next point, third point that I would like to mention is this whole problem of populism, which we have to fight. And I think this is a particularly cumbersome and difficult issue for European member states, for the European Union, because it's there and it doesn't go away by just putting a button. Many people see globalization as a threat. Maybe the European elites have for too long ignored that there is a certain segment in the societies, in all our societies, for whom globalization is not this fantastic thing which maybe people in this room can make many gains of, but they're real losers of globalization. And so we need, I think, two things. We need strategies to form, to distribute the benefits of globalization in a more equitable manner in our societies. And second, and that's particularly important, we need somehow a consensus on communication on this issue. We are living in the era of short-lived electoral cycles. We're living in the area of social media with everything that comes with it. However, if we are honest to ourselves, we have to agree that the adjustment that our economies, our societies, our governments have to achieve in this accelerating process of globalization, this is something that cannot happen from one day to the other or from one year to the next. It needs time. And we know that it is very difficult in our political systems to find a way to transmit this message to our people because they are impatient. They want to have, of course, results now. And the dilemma we face is that the problems are getting more complex, but the solutions that are asked from us are always binary or more simple. So this is, I have no recipe, of course, for that, but I think maybe this is a big issue for the systems of education in our member states. And finally, I think the last point I would like to make is we must stand by our values. And maybe the election in the United States is a healthy wake-up call. I think that the bad-mouthing of the EU, particularly also in the EU, is sometimes, frankly, completely out of proportion. I mean, in my professional life, I had the chance and privilege to live in a couple of other countries, and I know that for many countries, the EU is still a reference point, and it's a reference point not least because of our values of human rights, democracy, protection of minorities, rule of law, and so on. And also, let me say that we are living today no longer in a system where international affairs is a matter for cabinets of emperors, kings, or prime ministers like in the 19th century. We're living in an international affairs environment that is very much marked through transnational corporate structures, and second, through more and more integrating, or not integrating is the wrong word, but more and more communicating civil society across the world. And I think it would be a shame if we would sort of compromise our value basis, which is really the decisive basis, because I would claim that the EU is more than a single market. It is mainly the foundation of our values that make us Europeans, that if that basis would go away. Now, as for what shall we do concretely, I would say that what Mr. Juncker has proposed the other day contains all the right elements, and it will be the art to mix these elements into a good mixture. As far as certainly we are concerned and Germany is concerned, you will not be surprised that I will tell you that for us the EU is, as I said before, more than a single market. It should make space for flexible responses. It should certainly allow people to go ahead, but leaving, of course, the door open, like we have been doing with Schengen and with EMU. But it is also an EU where we have to be much more serious on how we create good results for our citizens, a better Europe. And I think it should be possible, at least from a rational way, to make an analysis of all these policy areas, to ask ourselves where are member states better equipped to deal with issues themselves? And I'm sure that there are issues that are better left with the member states, and even within the member states on other municipalities or at the regional level. And there's a whole debate on subsidiarity that you are probably aware of, and which has been neglected for many years, for many decades actually. But there are certainly issues, you would agree with me, that it is very difficult for a single member state to say, I can deal with this alone. If you look at the immigration challenge, I think it is very difficult to argue that we would not be in the need of a finally real good European asylum system, for example. And if you look at the euro, I can only agree what Mr. Papademos said, that we need, of course, to make headway towards a fiscal union. So I think, in a way, from a rational point of view, it is not so difficult to analyze the fields where we need maybe more Europe, and also the elements where we need less Europe. But however, we need also to realize that, especially in this year and after this very, very difficult year with the Brexit, difficult for the pro-Europeans, it is difficult to design some sort of blueprint for future EU instantly. We need at the moment, of course, some time to consolidate, to do damage control, and I think, people, as I don't know, others work in Brussels. I do not see an appetite at the moment, at this moment, I would say, for new treaty changes and more primary law. But this is a dilemma because, as Mr. Papademos said, there are issues which await instant responses for which our instruments, as we see them today, are obviously not sufficient. So with this, I would like to conclude, and thank you very much.